the substandard chicken from America. We don't need American chicken. We have our own industry here. Once we start bringing that in overnight, America's $5 billion chicken export empire came crashing down. 94% of shipments rejected. Over 130,000 tons left to rot in ports from Houston to Savannah. Countries that once begged for U.S. poultry slammed their doors shut. How did something this massive collapse almost without warning? You're going to have to allow us to trade our chicken and our beef in your market. We're not tied to the EU anymore. We can set our own food standards. So, what do you want? There's an argument that says, if you've ever wondered why American chicken isn't always welcome in countries like China, Japan, or across the European Union, it boils down to one controversial word: chlorine. Yes, chlorine, the same chemical that sanitizes your swimming pool, is also used to wash chicken in the United States. It's been a common practice for decades in American poultry processing plants. The logic is simple. By rinsing chicken carcasses in chlorine or other antimicrobial solutions, you reduce the risk of foodborne illnesses like Salmonella and Campylobacter. But while it might sound like a clever hygiene hack, it sparked serious international backlash. Certainly Western, I think the whole of you anyway. We're the fattest nation in Western Europe. But not just America. Well, but we're fat already. No, you don't understand. I do understand. Just because a chicken has been washed in chlorine, it doesn't mean it makes you fat. In many parts of the world, especially in Europe and Asia, this chlorine washing method isn't just frowned upon, it's outright banned. Their argument is not simply about the chemical itself, but what it represents. Critics of the practice argue that it masks poor hygiene standards during the earlier stages of poultry farming and processing. Instead of ensuring clean conditions throughout the chicken's life and slaughter, they say the US method leans on a chemical shortcut at the end. In countries like the UK and Germany, for example, food safety regulations emphasize preventing contamination from the start. Better living conditions, cleaner slaughter facilities, and higher overall standards. Washing away the problem at the end doesn't fly with them. Georgia State House reporter Abby Kajuras explains. The U.S. Poultry and Egg Council is headquartered in Tucker, Georgia, but they have offices all over the world. China has echoed these concerns loudly, and they've taken action to match. Not only have they cited chemical residues as a reason for their import bans, but they've also pushed back on what they call a lack of transparency in U.S. poultry processing. Japanese and South Korean markets have taken similar positions. For them, food isn't just about price or volume. It's about trust, health, and traceability. And in their view, chlorine-washed chicken doesn't meet that standard. It's important to understand that this isn't just about safety. It's also become a symbol in the ongoing food trade wars. While the US maintains that chlorine-washed chicken is perfectly safe, many foreign governments see it as a line they won't cross. They point to studies showing that certain antimicrobial rinses could leave behind chemical residues, especially if processing is rushed or inconsistent. Though these levels might technically be within the legal safety limit, international markets have become increasingly cautious in a post-pandemic world where consumers demand more transparency about where their food comes from and how it's produced. For American chicken exporters, this has become a massive barrier. Even when the chicken meets all USDA standards, it still gets turned away by countries that have stricter or simply different rules. This controversy isn't new, but in 2025, it became a flashpoint. When over 130,000 tons of American poultry were rejected, chlorine washing was one of the top reasons cited. And this time, it wasn't just China saying no thanks. Even long-standing trade partners that once tolerated US practices began closing their doors. Brand new reporting reveals that Team Trump is prepping tariffs on potentially trillions of dollars worth of goods from all around the world. Practically everything that comes into the United States. In early 2025, something happened that sent shockwaves through the American agriculture industry. More than 130,000 tons of US chicken. Yes, that's not a typo. 130,000 tons were rejected for export and left sitting frozen and unwanted at two of America's busiest shipping hubs, the Port of Houston and the Port of Savannah. To put that in perspective, that's enough chicken to feed tens of millions of people. But instead of ending up on dinner tables in Asia, this chicken sat idle, turning from valuable product to financial deadweight in a matter of weeks. As much as Trump claims to want to support American manufacturing, major US firms hate tariffs too. Once again, from the New York Times, quote, China delivered the most brutal blow. Once the largest importer of American poultry, Beijing suddenly closed the gates. It wasn't a gradual tapering off. It was a swift, decisive shutdown. And they didn't just stop at rejecting 1 or 2 shipments. They revoked export licenses from hundreds of U.S. processing plants in one sweep, citing concerns like antibiotic residue, traceability issues, and unfair trade practices. But that wasn't the end of it. What truly shocked U.S. producers was that this move created a domino effect. They're sold in part, they have about 15% of the mortgage market. So, when they either get fewer dollars because we're buying less stuff, other countries quickly followed China's lead. Japan, which had imported U.S. chicken for years, began pulling back. South Korea, a smaller but still significant buyer, paused new orders. Even Taiwan, historically a reliable market, turned to other suppliers. It wasn't just about the quality of the chicken. It was about the loss of trust in the system that delivered it. And just like temperate climate change, and just like that, hundreds of containers were stuck with nowhere to go. As the United States floundered in trade disputes and a collapsing poultry export system in 2025, Canada deftly claimed the global stage, transforming the poultry trade with a silent, strategic masterstroke. While the U.S. grappled with rejected shipments and revoked licenses, Canada acted swiftly, capitalizing on tensions sparked by Washington's aggressive 2024 tariffs, which provoked China's retaliation. Recognizing the opportunity, Canada launched the AgriTrace 25 program, a blockchain-based system that revolutionized poultry tracking. Every chicken's journey from farm to overseas port was meticulously recorded, verified by the Canadian Ministry of Agriculture, offering digital proof of unparalleled hygiene, safety, and transparency. This wasn't mere documentation, it was a game changer that restored buyer confidence shattered by U.S. failures. Canada bolstered this with a $350 million investment, not a bailout, but a bold growth plan, upgrading processing plants, expanding cold storage, and scaling port operations in Vancouver and Halifax. Canadian producers delivered hormone-free, antibiotic-free poultry through transparent supply chains, meeting the exacting demands of markets like China, Japan, and South Korea. The results were staggering. In Q2 2025, China's imports of Canadian poultry surged 72%, Japan's rose 41%, and South Korean revenue hit $100 million, shifting decades-long loyalties from U.S. suppliers. Canada's edge wasn't price. Its poultry was costlier, but trust and reliability, critical for regulation-stringent nations. While the U.S. struggled to defend its controversial chlorine washing practices amid port backlogs and plant closures, Canada's understated approach, discreet meetings showcasing traceability reports, outshone the chaos. In months, Canadian farmers, long overshadowed by their southern neighbor, became Asia's preferred source, proving that in a world wary of food safety risks, preparation and integrity trump cost, redefining global trade dynamics. As the United States floundered in trade disputes and a collapsing poultry export system in 2025, Canada emerged as a strategic titan, silently reshaping the global poultry trade. Without bluster or blame, Canadian officials executed a precise plan, transforming their industry into Asia's top supplier in mere weeks. By the time the U.S. grasped the crisis, Canada had secured deals, shipped poultry, and claimed dominance. This was no fluke, but a calculated triumph. Canada had tracked the rising U.S.-Asia tensions, sparked by Washington's 2024 tariffs, which provoked China's retaliation. Acting swiftly, Canada launched AgriTrace 25, a blockchain system tracing every chicken from farm to port. Verified by the Canadian Ministry of Agriculture, this digital ledger ensured transparency, proving hygiene and safety at every step, like a passport for each bird. This bold innovation rebuilt trust eroded by U.S. rejections. Canada's government backed this with a $350 million growth plan, not a bailout, upgrading farms, processing plants, cold storage, and ports in Vancouver and Halifax. Canadian producers met global demands with hormone-free, antibiotic-free poultry via reliable, transparent supply chains. The impact was seismic. In Q2 2025, China's imports of Canadian poultry surged 72%, Japan's rose 41%, and South Korea, once US-dominated, saw Canadian firms earn $100 million in one quarter. These were tectonic market shifts as loyal US buyers pivoted. Canada's pricier poultry won not on cost, but on trust and traceability, vital for regulation-driven markets like China, Japan, and South Korea. While the US defended its chlorine washing amid plant closures, Canada's quiet strategy, showcasing traceability in discreet meetings, outshone the chaos. Canadian farmers, long in the US's shadow, became Asia's preferred source, proving that in a world wary of food safety, foresight and integrity redefine trade. This catastrophic collapse of America's $5 billion poultry export empire is not merely a trade statistic. It is a devastating indictment of flawed policies and misplaced priorities. The rejection of 130,000 tons of U.S. chicken, left rotting in ports, exposed the fragility of an industry blindsided by its reliance on chlorine washing and a few key markets. Who bears the cost of this failure? The farmers in Georgia and Arkansas, whose livelihoods crumbled as plants closed and debts mounted, or the policymakers whose aggressive tariffs ignited a global backlash. The loss of trust from nations like China and Japan, once loyal buyers, signals a deeper erosion of America's agricultural credibility. Meanwhile, Canada's meteoric rise, fueled by the Apertrace 25 blockchain system and a $350 million strategic investment, redefined the global poultry trade. By prioritizing transparency, hormone-free production, and reliability, Canada didn't just fill the void. It stole the crown, capturing markets with a 72% surge in Chinese imports and 41% in Japan. This seismic shift raises a provocative question. Has America's dominance in food trade been permanently displaced? The world now watches a humbled US, its ports choked with unsold goods, its rural communities gutted, while Canada stands as a beacon of trust and innovation. The stakes extend beyond economics, food security, global alliances, and consumer confidence hang in the balance. Can the US rebuild its reputation, or will it remain a cautionary tale of hubris in a world that demands integrity over expediency? The choices made next will shape not just the future of American agriculture, but its standing on the global stage. The clock is ticking and the world is waiting.